Thank you very much to welcome you to Medzone African Motives. Today I want us to prepare together and revise Public Administration N4, which is a core subject, the core subject of public management as a course. So this paper was written in November 2024. So this question paper consists of 8 pages. So let us be together from the start of this presentation to the end of it. So let's quickly move on to the instructions and information. So here are our instructions and information. So our instructions read as follows. Answer all the questions. We are going to answer all the questions on this question paper. Read all the questions carefully. Number the answers according to the numbering system used in this question paper. Use only black or blue pen. Write neatly and legible. So these are our instructions. Make sure that you go through this instruction before you can attend any question. Thank you. So let us move on to our section A, question 1. So our question 1 is a true or false questions. Like as it says, indicate whether the following statements are true or false by writing only true or false next to the question number 1.1 to 1.110 in the answer book. So without wasting much time, let's attend to the questions. Let's attend to these statements and try to see if they are true or false. 1.1, the Marikana Commission of Inquiry was appointed by the President to investigate the tragic incident at Lomini mine in Marikana. Is it true or false? That is true. That is true. It is true. The Marikana Commission of Inquiry was indeed appointed by the President. To investigate the tragic incident at the Lomini mine in Marikana. So it's true. Moving on to 1.2. The community is the starting point of child's communication system. The community is the starting point of child's communication system. So once you say communication system, it's not about the community. So this is false. In democracy, citizens are allowed private ownership of property or business. In democracy, citizens are allowed ownership of property or business. So that is also true. That is true. Yeah, it's true that in democracy, citizens are generally allowed private ownership of property or business. It's true. They are allowed. 1.14, voters vote for national and provincial legislation on one ballot paper. This one is false. There are 2 ballot papers that are given to a voter. So it's false. In South Africa, voters vote for national and provincial legislation on a separate ballot paper. So this is false. 1.15, commission is an example of an impersonal instrumental function. That is 1.15. So that is false as well. 1.5, where it says commission can be both personal, impersonal, and instrumental or expressive, depending on the context. So we are saying this is false. This is false, where we are told that communication is an example of impersonal instrumental function. It's false because communication can be both personal and impersonal, not only impersonal. It can be personal and impersonal and instrumental or expressive, depending on the context. So by just saying it's an impersonal instrument, is a false. 1.16, municipal council consists of councillors that are residents of the municipality. That is true. That is true. Municipal council typically consists of councillors who are residents of the municipality. That is true. 1.7 now. The Premier appoints cabinet. The Premier appoints cabinet ministers from the National Assembly and allocates specific portfolios to them. That is false. 1.7 is false. That is false. The President appoints cabinet ministers from the National Assembly and allocates portfolios, not the Premier, who is a provincial leader. The ministers cannot be appointed by the Premier. Remember, a Premier is a provincial leader. So he is not, or she is not, the one to appoint a cabinet minister. They are appointed by the President. So this is false. So this is false. So 1.8 now. 1.8. Judicial authorities interpret laws. They interpret laws and enforce them by prosecuting offenders in courts of law. So this one is true. That is true. True. Judicial authorities interpret laws, we know very well for sure, and enforce them through the prosecution of offenders in courts. That is true. 1.9. The Electricity Supply Commission, ESCOM, which supplies energy to the country, is an example of a state department. No, that this is not an example of state department. So this is false. It's not an example of state department. ESCOM is not, because ESCOM is a private company. So now we are coming to policy making. Policy making is typically a core function of government. Policy making is an example of an auxiliary function. Policy making is an example of an auxiliary function. That is false, because policy making is typically a core function of government rather than auxiliary one. So these are our answers. So you are to get 20 when answering these 10 statements of telling whether they are true or false. So you have to get how many marks? 20 marks. So that is that. Now we are to move on. Now we are to move on. Now we are to move on to question 2. We are to move on to question 2. Question 2 reads as follows. Choose a description from column B that matches an item in column A. This is a description in column B that matches an item in column A. Write only a letter A to L. A to L next to the question number 2.1 to 2.110 in the answer book. So we are given what? The multiple choice. Not multiple choice, but the matching questions. 2.1, 2.1, 2.1 Independent Electoral System, IEC, Independent Electoral Commission, sorry, Independent Electoral Commission. So we want to see the description in column B that matches an item in A. So you can see that the L is a correct answer, because IEC compile and maintain voters' roll. They are the ones who compile and maintains what? Voters' control. So the correct answer is L. L. So now coming to members of Executive Council. So now let us see which description matches that item 2.2, members of the Executive Council. So you can see that members of the Executive Council, they are appointed by the Premier. They are appointed by the Premier. The correct answer is F. The correct answer is F. The Constitution now. Constitution, and then we want to see which description matches Constitution. That is 2.3. then we can see now G matches constitution. As we know that constitution is the highest law in South Africa. Is the highest law in South Africa. Now coming to 2.4, disqualification from 14. Disqualification from 14. You can see now the I is correct answer. A person guilty of corrupt or illegal behavior at the 14 station. So, person who is corrupt or illegal behavior at the 14 station is going to be disqualified from voting. Such a person cannot be allowed to vote. So the correct answer is I. National Council of Provinces. Now we're talking about 2.5. Now we're talking about 2.5. National Council of Provinces. That the correct answer there is H. 2.5 is H. 6 permanent delegates. Those are the National Councils of Province. Those are 6 permanent delegates. The H is a correct answer. Parliament now 2.6, and you can see 2.6 that the E is the correct answer. Members enjoy freedom of speech. That is the functions of the Parliament. This is one of the functions of the Parliament, that they enjoy freedom of speech. So E comes the correct answer. Now 2.7 minister. 2.7 minister. You can see B is the correct answer because ministers answer questions about their state departments. They are responsible for their state. Remember, they are the head of the state department. Ministers are head of the state department. So that is why they answer questions about their state departments. So B is correct. Cabinet now. Cabinet 2.8. So 2.8, you can see C is a correct answer. Cabinet, top executive institution of the South African government. That is top executive institution of the South African government. Those are the cabinets. So that is C. Correct answer is C. Premier now 2.9. Premier. So premier, you can see D now becomes the correct answer. Administers the province. You know very well that the premiers, they administers what? The province. So the premiers, that is D. Municipal council. Now the correct answer is A. That matches this item in column A. This description consists of mayor, deputy mayor. That is municipal council. So that is that. So this is our question 2. Now we are to move on to question 3 now. We are to move to question 3. So now we are on our question 3. So question 3 read as follows. Complete the following sentences by filling in the missing words next. By filling in the missing words next, write only the word or words next to the question number 3.1 to 3.15 in the answer box. So we are to fill in the missing words. We are to fill in the missing words. It says local government is dash level of government in South Africa. So we know that local government is the lowest or last level or third level. So we can say it's a lowest level. You can say it's the lowest level. You can say it's a third level. You can even say the last level. So all these are correct. Local governments are governed by municipal council who exercise legislative authority. So local governments are governed by municipal council who exercise legislative authority. That is that. Municipal council are given powers and functions by the Constitution. Constitution. The Constitution is the one that gives what municipal councils powers and functions. So they're given the powers by the Constitution. Municipal council passes dash that must not be contradict the national or provincial. So municipal council passes what? It passes bylaws. It passes what? Bylaws. They passes by laws. That is that. They passes bylaws. But those bylaws must not contradict with the national and provincial laws. So that is that. The term of office for a municipal council is usually how many years? That is 5 years. It's what? 5 years. So the correct answer is 5 years. So this is our question 3. This is our question 3. So that is how you were to answer it. So now we are to move on to question 4. We are to move on to question 4 now. So we are to move on to question 4. Four is section B. That is section B, question 4. Read the scenario below and answer the questions. So this is the scenario that we are to read first. Parliament will ensure that Employment Equity Amendment Bill is passed as soon as possible. This comes after the National Assembly failed to reach a quorum. This comes after the National Assembly failed to reach what? A quorum, as not enough members attended to vote. So you remember when you're talking about quorum, we're saying at least half of the members must be present to attend a meeting. So you should have enough members so that we can come up with a very good decisions. So you can see here they failed to reach a quorum, as there were no enough members to attend to vote. So the amendment bill will empower the Minister of Labour to set employment targets for different economic sectors and increase employment levels in the workplace. So now here are the questions that follow after the scenario. 4.1. Which level of government do you find a parliament? So parliament, which level of the government? You know very well the level of government is what? Is central. It's central. That is a central. So you can say it's central. So we can come to our answer book, question 4, section B. Here we are. So it's central or national. As we went through the scenario that we given, you can see that it talks about what? The central government. So that is that. So now let us go back to other questions. So here we agree that it's central or national. So one of the main functions of parliament is to pass a bill into law. Describe the other functions carried out by the parliament. So we want to know the other functions of the parliament. As we know that one of the functions is to pass a bill into a law. So we can quickly go to our answers that are given. So here are our functions of the parliament, other functions of the parliament. So as it says, Parliament will in future be continuously in session. So they will be continuously in session. So it means that Parliament can be called at any time. It means that the Parliament can be called at any time. They can be called at any time, not only during fixed months. So it means they should always be active. They should be very active so they can be called anytime, not only during fixed months, anytime. For example, we can make an example of this point, like where we are saying, when COVID-19 started, Parliament held immediate sessions to pass regulations. So that is why we are saying it can be called at any time. So that is that. Members enjoy freedom of speech. That is another function of the parliament. Members enjoy freedom of speech. So members can speak openly in debates without being sued. So it means you're saying members can speak openly in debates. Openly in debates without being sued. Without being sued. So that is that members can speak openly in debates without being sued. So that is that. Parliament has its own penalties. The parliament has its own penalties. So we're saying parliament disciplines its own members for misconduct. So it means there are penalties. There are penalties. So those penalties that we're talking about, it means that the parliament disciplines its own members for misconduct. So they can try to discipline their own members for misconduct that they can come with. Also, parliaments function by means of debate after which a decision is reached. Meaning to say, new bills are discussed. So the new bills are discussed, then decided by majority. You see, that is that. So new bills are going to be discussed and then decided by majority. That's what we are saying when you're saying new bills. New bills are discussed. We are saying new bills are discussed. They are discussed, then decided by majority. That is that. You can make an example. The Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill was debated before 40. You see, that is that. After a bill is introduced, debate takes place and the majority and a majority vote taken. So that is that. So that is after a debate. So after a debate, a bill is introduced now. The introduced debate takes place and majority now vote now they can be taken. That is why we have said it before that then we are going to discuss new bills and then decided by majority. That's what it means. Then a quorum of at least half, that is another function, a quorum of at least half the House should be present. So at least half members must be present before a decision. That is that. So example, if only 100 MPs, the MP has attend out of 400, voting can take place. So that is that. Voting cannot take place. So if only 100 MPs attended out of 400, you see, it's not even half of that. So it means the voting cannot take place. Now another function is that a committee system is used to resolve differences. A committee system is used to resolve what differences. So we are going to have committees. So smaller groups handle specific issues. That is another function. Most important function is the most important function of the parliament is the enactment of laws, the making of laws, enactment of laws. That is that. So the main duty is making new laws. That is the main duty is making new laws. That is the very most important function of the parliament, where they enact what? They enact laws. They make new laws. Hope we are together on that. Also, there is a judicial control over parliament. Judicial control over parliament. Courts can check parliament's actions. This is where we can say courts can check parliament's action. So that is that. So we can make an example like to say the Constitutional Court struck down parts of Electoral Act as unconstitutional. So that is that. Must keep the executive accountable. Must keep the executive accountable. That is that. Must keep executive accountable. So we are talking about accountability now. The accountability, this is where you keep the executive answerable. Once they are accountable, it means the executives are answerable. Exam ministers are questioned in parliament about service delivery failures. So they are accountable. They have to answer on that. Summon any person to give evidence, produce any documents, or ask any institution to report to them. So we are talking about the summoning powers. We are talking about the summoning powers, whereby it can demand evidence or documents. It can demand what? Evidence or documents now. Agree to a state of emergency. Agree to a state of emergency. That is that. Now they are to agree to state emergency. Can as well pass a vote of no confidence in the cabinet. Vote of no confidence. So cabinet can be removed. Cabinet can be removed. So, for example, if ever several votes of no confidence were brought against the President Jacob Zuma, so that is that. Also control state institutions. They control state institutions. So they oversee state-owned bodies. They oversee state-owned bodies. Also can amend the constitution. They can amend what? That is the function of the parliament. Can amend the constitution. They can change the law of the land. They can change the law of the land. That is what we say. They can amend the constitution. They as well debates and votes on the annual budget. So that is what we're talking about, the budget debates now, whereby they approve national budget yearly. They have to approve the national budget. Establish a joint rules committee to make rules and voters. So that is that. That is that. They established a joint rules committee to make rules and as well as the others. So these are the answers for question 4.2. So you were to answer any 6 and then get your 12 marks. Hope we are still together. So now let us go to 4.3. So our 4.3 reads as follows. Describe the composition of National Assembly. Describe the composition of National Assembly. So here are our answers on that. Here are our answers on that. 4.3. As you can see here are our answers. The National Assembly consists of 350, 400 members. 350 to 400 members. So that is that National Assembly composition. They consist of that. Then there are the 200 seats are allocated on the basis of national election according to the percentage of votes of each party. So we are saying 200 seats is a national It's a national list. 200 seats is a national list based on votes received by each party. For example, if ANC gets 57% of votes, they get about 114 seats from national list. That is what it means. And then 200 seats are allocated to various provinces as follows, like I said. So 200 seats they are provincial now. They are provincial list. Because 200, you remember it was what? National list. This one, it was what? National list. Why this? The other 200 is what? Is now provincial. Provincial list. So that is how all of them, we can make up to 400 that we've talked about. So, like it says here, as they've said it here, that Gauteng will be is 43, KwaZulu-Natal 40, Eastern Cape 28, Western 21, Limpopo 20, Free State 15, of West 15, Mpumalanga 14, Northern Cape 4. So this is how we can see that they are allocated. So now let us move on. Let us move on. Let us move on. Oh, again, a speaker is elected amongst members who serves as what? As a chairperson. As a chairperson of the National Assembly. So a speaker is elected among the members who served as a chairperson of the National Assembly. So speaker is the one who's going to preside over debates, maintains order. That person who's going to preside over debates and then maintains order. So it's the one who can even maintains order. It's going to maintain order and also presides over debates. That is a speaker that we're talking about, who serves as a chairperson. Each political party will choose a leader of National Assembly called the chief whip. So each political party is going to choose a leader of National Assembly, whom we call chief whip. So a chief whip is that person who's going to organize party discipline in Parliament. It's going to organize his party discipline in the Parliament. So, for example, a chief whip of ANC ensures members attend important votes. So that is that. Also, each political party may choose additional whips of the ratio of 1 whip to each 8.69 members. So those are the additional whips of ratio of 1 whip per 8 to 9 MPs. So that is that. Political parties that are too small to have whip can attend meetings of the whip. So small parties share whips or rely on parliament staff because they are too small. So they can rely on parliament staff or they can share whips. So that's what it means. So moving on, majority party can appoint deputy whip. So those with majority parties, they can even appoint one deputy appointed by majority party. They are elected every 5 years. 5-year term now. We're talking about 5-year term. MPs and whips are elected every general election. So that is that. Elections in 2024 will choose new MPs and party whips. That's what we are trying to make it easy. So now we are to move on to 4.4. So 4.4 is as follows. Explain who can qualify to be a member of National Assembly. Or explain who can qualify to be a member of National Assembly. So here we are, 4.4. Explain who can qualify for National Assembly. So it must be someone who is a South African citizen, qualified to vote in the general election. Someone who qualifies to vote in the general election must make an oath or solemn affirmation to other duties. So that these are the answers for question 4.4, or who to qualify to be the member of National Assembly. So now let us go to question 4.5. Question 4.5 reads as follows: ministers represent the state departments in the parliament. And you remember that the ministers are the heads of the departments. Which state department does the minister represent in the above scenario? We did read the scenario together. We did read the scenario together where we say the parliament will ensure that the Employment Equity Amendment Bill is passed on as soon as possible. This comes after the National Assembly failed to reach the quorum as not enough members attended to vote. So the amendment bill will empower the Minister of Labor to set employment targets for different economic sectors and increase employment levels in the workplace. So the question is, which departments does the minister represent in the above? That is the Labor Department. That is that. So that is the Department of Labor. Talks about the Department of Labor. Now we are to attend to question 4.6. Question 4.6 reads as follows: Parliament will ensure that the Parliament will ensure to pass this amendment bill as soon as possible. How will this benefit the citizens of our country? How will this benefit the citizens of our country? As we are told that Parliament will ensure to pass this amendment bill as soon as possible. So how is this going to benefit the citizens of the country? That is what we are asked. So that is 4.6. It will benefit the citizens as it will create the employment opportunities. So people will be able to access jobs now. We have one of the highest rate of unemployment in the world. So that is that. More employment opportunities help more people to live a better standard of life and therefore afford to pay for government services. So they will have an income, then they will manage to afford to pay for government services. More people working provides higher income for government as more tax is going to be collected. So that is how this is going to benefit. Prevent people from leaving our country to go and work overseas. So if there are jobs, it means people will not they will not leave the country. Helps to reduce crime, violence, drug, and alcohol dependence. So people, if they are busy, they are working, it means all these that are mentioned here, like crime, violence, drug, they will be totally avoided. So that is that. Now let us move on to question 4.7. Question 4.7, the Minister of Labor is also a member of Cabinet. The Minister of Labor is also a member of Cabinet. Describe the composition of the Cabinet. Now we have to describe the composition of the Cabinet now. So composition of the Cabinet. So here we are on 4.7. The cabinet consists of the president, we know, as the head of the cabinet. Deputy presidents should be there as well, and then as well as the ministers. That's what we call a cabinet. Cabinet is made up of president, deputy president, and the ministers. As you know, the ministers are the heads of the department. So the president is the head of the cabinet. That is that. The president appoints the deputy president and the ministers and assigns them powers and can as well dismiss them. The term office is 5 years. So that is all about question 4. So hope we are still together as we are moving on to question 5. So now we are moving on to question 5. Now we are on question 5, as it says, read the scenario below and answer the questions. It says, in 1993, the National Party, African National Congress, ANC, and other political organizations engaged in a series of negotiations under the umbrella of the Conventions of Democratic South Africa, that is CODESA. So the negotiations eventually led to the adoption of the interim constitution. So that is the interim constitution. These reforms resulted in the establishment of a constitutional democracy that was eventually led by Nelson Mandela after the ANC won the first multiracial elections. A constitutional assembly was formed to write the final constitution, which was adopted on 11 October 1996. So now we have to answer the questions that follow this scenario. The first one, explain what you understand by the following terms: the interim constitution, the constitutional democracy. Interim constitution and constitutional democracy. So that here we are on our 5.11 and 5.12. We are talking about the interim constitution. So it says it became the fundamental law. We are talking about the interim constitution. It became fundamental law of South Africa soon after 1994 elections. So that it became what? A fundamental law after it became a fundamental law of South Africa after the elections of 1994. So that is that it was guided by SA after first democratic elections. That is after first democratic elections. That is when it became what? A fundamental law. That is, it was guided by SA. It was guided by South Africa. It was guided by SA, South Africa, after first democratic elections. Democratic elections. Also, it further on says it had mandate to adopt final constitution. It had mandate to adopt final constitution. So mandate meaning to say to draft final constitution, that is to draft final constitution. It has mandate to draft final constitution. That is why it says it had mandate to adopt final constitution. So it had mandate to draft final constitution. That is that. So that is why we are saying the Constitutional Assembly used it to write the 1996 Constitution. Also, restructure government after the abolishment of the apartheid system. Now we have to restructure the government after the abolishment of the apartheid system. That is that. Removed apartheid system. That is when we remove the apartheid system. The apartheid system. So the apartheid system was removed. Apartheid system. Like some of the old apartheid parliaments were dissolved at that time. It was dissolved. Introduce a Bill of Rights now. Introduce a Bill of Rights against the legislation and government action. Could be tested. Introduce a Bill of Rights against which legislation and government action could be tested. So a Bill of Rights introduced gave legal protection to citizens. So a Bill of Rights was introduced, and this Bill of Rights gave what now? A legal protection to a citizen. Gave legal rights. It gave legal rights, legal protection, legal protection to citizens. So that is that. Made provision for government of national unity soon after the 1994 elections. So made provision for a government national unity. So we're talking about government national unity. Shared power among big parties, government national unity. So this is whereby now the shared power was given to big parties as it made provision for a government of national unity. Made a provision for a government of national unity soon after 1994 election. Also was in force between 27 April 1994 until new constitution was adopted on 3 February 1997. So it was allowed multi-party cabinet. So that is that. Claimed that a party holding 20 or more seats in the National Assembly would claim one more or portfolios. That is that. Made provision for the election of a deputy president for each party holding more than 80 seats in the parliament. So you have to choose any one of those above answers. So now let us move on to question 5.2. 5.12, sorry, 5.12, whereby we are asked to talk about 5.12. It was about what? 5.12. It was about to describe the powers and functions of the. No, it was 5.12. In fact, it was about constitutional democracy. We were to explain this term, constitutional democracy. So here we are to explain constitutional democracy. So constitutional democracy is about, this is what a result for reconciliation process. So it talks about reconciliation process. It means this means build a national unity. Build national unity. Build national unity. So that this is when you're talking about that. Also, a new constitution was adopted as South African was now democratic country. As it was now democratic country. So we're talking about the democratic system. As it says, a new constitution was adopted as South Africa was now democratic country. So we're talking about the democratic system. One person, one vote. That is that. So it becomes what? Democratic system. We are talking about democratic system. That is that. Whereby we are saying every South African citizens over 18 can vote. Every South African. We're talking about democracy now. So it gives right to everyone who is 18 and above to vote now. The Constitution provides a democratic system and the voting opportunities. The voting Constitution also provides a democratic system, like we've said, and the voting opportunities for all citizens. So that is that. So that this Bill of Rights also defines what the Constitution is very important as it protects the rights of the citizens and describes the different levels of the institution of the government and lays down their powers and relationships. So it means that now we are talking about what? it protects the rights of the citizens. You're talking about human rights protection here. You're talking about human rights protection. You're talking about human rights protection. When we are talking about the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights, and example, same-sex marriage was legalized through constitutional protection of equality. That is when you're talking about human rights. Also, we have talked about, we said the Constitution is very important as it protects the human rights of describe the different levels of institution and government. So the Constitution now regulates the relationship between government and citizens and ensures that citizens' rights are protected. That is that. Also, the government power should be limited to protect human rights according to Constitution. That is that. It regulates the state citizens relationship. Also, government power should be limited to protect human rights according to the Constitution. So now we have to move on to another question. Now we are on 5.2. 5.2 reads as follows. Nelson Mandela became the president of South Africa after the first multi-racial elections. Describe the powers and functions of the president in a country. Powers as well as what? And functions of the president. And functions of the president. So here we are. So these are the powers and functions of the president. These are the powers and functions of the president. So the first one, they assign what? The bills. They assign to bills. Presidents, the president is going to assign to bills, refer bills back to for consideration. If the bills are not that okay, then he can refer them back for consideration. Convenes meetings of cabinet. So remember, it's the head there in the cabinet. So it's the one who convenes the meeting of the cabinet. Appoint commissions of inquiry and ambassadors. That is his main role and function. Refer disputes that might occur in a parliament to the constitutional court or other appropriate institution. That is that. Also, the president appoints and recognizes the diplomatic officers. Negotiation and signing of international agreements. That is all the roles and functions that are played by this president. Proclamation of referenda, pardons offenders, appoint deputy president and members of cabinet. Like we've already talked about this, that is the one who has power to appoint the deputy president and then as well as what the members of cabinet. Dismissal of deputy president and ministers. He also have the right to even dismissed both deputy as well as the ministers, as he is the one or she is the one to appoint them. Allocation of functions of executive deputy president, management of the cabinet as he is the head of it, formulation and execution of national policies. So these are the functions. These are the functions of the president. These are the functions of the president. So now we have to move on to another question. 5.3. Now we are on 5.3. When was the first multiracial elections held in South Africa? When was the first multiracial elections held in South Africa? So that is that. So we are here now. So it was when it was in 1994, 27 April 1994. That is that. So let's quickly go to another question. Let's quickly go to another question. 5.4. One of the qualifications for voting in the elections that you have to be a South African citizen. 5.4. Identify 4 ways that one can gain a citizenship in South Africa. And also explain how one can lose citizenship in South Africa. Also explain how one can lose a citizenship, how you can gain a citizenship and how you can lose a citizenship in South Africa. So you can gain a citizenship by birth, means to say a person becomes a citizen because they were born in the country. That's when you're talking about the birth. They become a citizen because they were born in the country. So we're talking about the baby born in South Africa to South African parents is a citizen by birth. Now by descent now. So by descent, the citizenship is gained through parents. This one is gained through what? Through parents. Even if born outside the country, even if that person born outside the country, but is going to gain a citizenship through the parents because the parents born in South Africa. So like we say, a child born in the UK to South African parents can claim South African citizenship by descent because parents born in South Africa, though their child born in the UK. So you can claim the citizenship by registration now. So a citizenship is granted after application and official approval, usually for people with strong ties to the country. You know, example, a foreign spouse of a South African may apply and be registered as a citizen. That is that. Also by naturalization now. By naturalization. By naturalization means that the citizenship is acquired after living legally in a country for a set number of years and meeting requirements. For example, a person from Zimbabwe who has lived in South Africa for many years meets the conditions can become a citizen by naturalization. That is that. Now let us, okay, like we have already know the question for 5.2, that is how you can lose what? A citizenship. 5.42 is about how we can lose a citizenship. So like it says, we can lose a citizenship through disposition or through disposition, that is by the minister. That is where the Minister of Home Affairs can revoke citizenship if it was obtained illegally. So the Minister of Home Affairs can revoke that if that citizenship was obtained illegally. That is how we can lose what? A citizenship now. That is through disposition. Also, if they obtain citizenship of another country, if they obtain citizenship of another country. So if South Africans automatically lose their citizenship if they voluntarily become citizens of another country without prior permission. Like to say a South African who takes USA citizenship without applying to retain in South Africa citizenship first loses their citizenship in South Africa. There's no way. Now through abnegation, so that is accepting political asylum of another country. That is through abnegation, whereby now we are saying if a South African seeks and accepts asylum or protection in another country, they may lose citizenship. Example, if a South African applies for asylum in Canada due to political fears, they can lose their SA citizenship, South African citizenship. Also, it can lose it through we can lose it again through a superannuation as well, whereby citizenship can lapse if someone lives outside of South Africa for extended period without renewing or showing ties to the country. So this is how you can lose the citizenship in South Africa. So now let us move on to question 5.5. See what it wants now. 5.5. So 5.5 read as follows. The final constitution was adopted on 11 October. The final constitution was adopted on 11 October. Describe now the characteristics of Constitution of South Africa. So now you have to describe what? The Constitution of South Africa. So you have to describe the Constitution of South Africa. Constitution of South Africa. So that is that. So now we are on Constitution of South Africa. So the first one is the Constitution is the supreme law also over Parliament. We are saying what? The Constitution now is the supreme law also over the Parliament. Meaning to say no law or action can override the Constitution. We are saying no law or action can override the Constitution. Override the Constitution. Example, if a parliament passes a law that limits freedom of speech, courts can strike it down. Courts can strike it down. Also provides democratic system, equal voting opportunities for all citizens. That is another characteristics of Constitution. It provides what? A democratic system and equal voting opportunities for all citizens. So it means every adult who is 18 plus has the right to vote. Every adult who is 18 plus has the right to vote. That is that. Meaning to say, in South Africa, men and women of all races vote equally in the elections. We're talking about equality now. It also, another characteristics, mean to say that, leads to a system of proportional representation in parliament. Leads to a system of proportional representation in parliament. So it means that parties get seats according to the percentage of votes won. That's what it means. Example, if a party wins 20% of votes, they get 20% of seats in the parliament. That is why we are saying it leads to a system of proportional representation in the parliament. Hope we are together on that. Also, a Bill of Rights guarantees equal rights and protects the rights of all citizens. So we are trying to say citizens enjoy protected freedoms such as equality, dignity, as well as expression. Hope you're still on one page on these characteristics. Courts are independent and only subject to the Constitution. Courts are independent and only subject to Constitution. So it means judges make decisions without political interference. So the judges, when they make the decisions, they make those decisions without political interference. Also, there are 3 levels of government who will cooperate, not interfere with one another. So there are 3 levels of government who are going to cooperate and not interfere with one another. We are talking about national, provincial, and local governments who work together under the principle of cooperative. Under the principle of cooperative. Like we know, national governments make healthy policies, province manage hospitals, municipalities provide clinics. That is that. 9 provinces replace the former 4 provinces and homelands. 9 provinces replace 4 provinces and homelands. So the apartheid homeland system was abolished now. The apartheid homeland system was abolished and SA was now divided into 9 democratic provinces. So that is that. So the 4 provinces the four former provinces that we're talking about. The provinces now include Gauteng. So we were trying to say now provinces include what? Gauteng, Limpopo, KwaZulu Natal. So that is that. Now, in an internationally recognized demarcated geographical area, that is an international recognized demarcated geographical area. So that is, a state must have a clear borders now. A state must have what? Clear borders accepted globally. Example, South Africa is bordered by Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Lesotho. So that is that. A state has a permanent population. A state has a permanent population. Remember, we are still talking about the characteristics of constitution. A state has a permanent population. So that means people live there continuously, not for temporary. South African's population is around 62 million people. So they live there permanently, not for temporary. The right to self-determination of a nation. The right to self-determination of nation. So people may govern themselves without outside control. That is that. People may govern themselves without outside control. That is that. The state has independent political entity. The state has an independent political entity. So that means the state controls its own government decision. South Africa makes its own laws, not laws that are dictated by another country. That is why you're saying the state has an independent political entity. That's what we are trying to say. Also, the state has international recognition. The state has international recognition. The state has international recognition. So other countries and the UN acknowledges it as a legitimate state. As you know, South Africa is recognized by a member of United Nations, that is UN, as well as the BRICS. They recognize what? South Africa. So now, diversity of all persons is recognized and ensured through 11 official languages. That shows what? Diversity. Electoral system of proportional representation, 9 representative of province in parliament, recognition of traditional leaders and traditional law and protection of rights, then entrenchment of the interest of diverse communities, establishment of 6 independent institutions to strengthen what? Democracy. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time, and make sure that you're going to share with others, and make sure that you're going to use this presentation as to prepare yourself for the coming final exam that you're going to write in November. Also for test 2 that you're going to write, because we know the test 2, it's all about what you studied throughout the semester. So this will help you to pass your test 2 so that you can qualify to write the exam. It will also help you when you sit for your final examination in November. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.